From the opinion pages of the Wall Street Journal, this is Potomac Watch.
Welcome back. The other number that the Labor Department releases that is always worth looking at is earnings and wages and inflation adjusted. Hourly earnings are down 3% year over year, and that's combined with a drop of about 0.5% in the average work week. And you combine that and you get a real drop in average weekly earnings of 3.6% year over year. And that is why people are so upset about the economy, even though we have some reasonably good jobs numbers last month, as President Biden brought up. But it suggests to me, Alicia, that even if we get to peak inflation, even if we start seeing moderation from here on out, we still have a long ways to go before workers catch up to the living standards and the buying power that they had before this inflation set in the first place.
The issue here is that the wage increases people are experiencing actually nominal, still healthy nominal wage increases, especially for those people who have been quitting their jobs. They've actually been experiencing the biggest increases, but those have been completely offset by the higher prices. I suspect that will continue, but the concern is that you alluded to, Kyle, is that these wage pressures could become entrenched in the economy and create a kind of a wage price spiral in which workers demand higher wages to offset the effects of inflation. And those higher wages and the higher labor costs get filtered into business costs, and then they have to raise their prices. And therefore, again, you set off a kind of a wage price spiral that continues to fan inflation. This is what the economists and Federal Reserve worry about. And so the jury's still out about whether that is going to happen. If we've seen signs of that in terms of some labor contracts that have been very generous, for instance, John Deere workers, in which they've received very healthy, shall we say, wage increases and increases into their 401k and other benefits. And so we may continue to see higher costs in terms of services and goods because of the workers are demanding higher wages to offset inflation.
So where does this leave the Federal Reserve, though, Kim? Because I get that President Biden is speaking to the public when he does stuff like this, but it seems to me that we've broken the back of inflation, we've conquered this mess, is not exactly the right message to be sending to the Federal Reserve right now as it weighs in coming months whether to keep raising interest rates or not.
Yeah, I doubt that the president's speech will factor into the Fed's thinking about this, at least in the short term. I mean, the other pressure you'll see on the Fed, though, too, is markets. They were very happy with the news today because in their minds, they are hopeful that it means that the Fed will let off the gas in terms of interest rate hikes, something the market always loves. But I would wager that the Fed understands this is 1 month, that there is a lot of noise in these numbers. They're going to want to see a number of sequential changes going forward. And even then, they're going to be looking ahead because some of the indicators that come through are, in fact, lagging. So I wouldn't expect any change from them in the near term. They have had a very mixed message at times, going from very hawkish at moments to very dovish at other moments. I guess we'll wait to see at the next meeting what they come up with. But in the meantime, one little interesting point, because we're talking about politics, we're only going to have 2 more of these CPI releases before voters go to the polls. So time is growing short for there to become any clearer picture that will help one party or the other.
Finally, we talked about Wisconsin's primaries yesterday, so let's do a bit of cleanup there. And the winner in the gubernatorial primary on the Republican side is Tim Michels, the owner of a big construction company. He defeated Rebecca Clayfish, the former lieutenant governor under Scott Walker, by about 5 percentage points, a pretty healthy margin. And here is Michels on election night.
I'd like to thank President Trump for his support, for his endorsement. It was a tremendous validation of our meteoric rise in this campaign. He knows that we need to have new leadership in Madison, and he sees a lot of similarities. He didn't have to run for president. I don't have to run for governor. He wanted to drain the swamp. We found out it's a really big swamp, and I know that Madison needs firm executive leadership, and that's what I'm going to do as governor.
That is another notch for Trump's endorsement record, certainly. And overall, it seems to me that it's looking better in these primaries than it did a few months ago, particularly after Georgia, where Governor Brian Kemp and Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger both steamrolled to victory. Trump is having better luck in recent weeks and recent months. I get that that's a different state, different people on the ballot. But Alicia, as always, it is one thing to have success in these Republican primaries, but the ultimate test is whether the candidates who get the nomination can go on in November to win the general election and appeal to independent, moderate, centrist voters to, win the race.
My concern is that Wisconsin should be an eminently pick up governor seat. Tony Evers, people in Wisconsin are generally not happy with his performance. They didn't like his lockdowns. The Wisconsin Supreme Court ended up overruling those to some extent. But he really hasn't excited Democrats in Wisconsin and has really alienated and ticked off some moderate Republicans, especially those in the Milwaukee suburbs with school closures, and are just generally unhappy with the way things are going in Wisconsin. They were getting a little fatigued with Scott Walker, and that was probably contributed to Scott Walker's defeat in 2018. But they aren't exactly enthused with Evers' Democratic leadership and his vetoes of Republican bills. And actually, what was interesting when you looked at the Wisconsin results was that Clayfish did vary actually pretty strongly in the Milwaukee suburbs and up in Green Bay. And those areas are generally where you see more kind of moderate Republican voters who are perhaps less culturally conservative. It's still very culturally conservative, and Wisconsin is a generally more culturally conservative state, but not quite fertile Trump grounds as in the more rural areas of Wisconsin. These are areas where you have a large population bases, a large electorates, and where the races are actually going to be decided in November. They're the bellwethers and the swing counties. And so the fact that Michels didn't win and didn't do all that well in these, or didn't win in these areas, doesn't bode well for him or Republicans in November. And I think the hope is that he doesn't have a damaging down ballot effect and that really crimps enthusiasm for Republican state legislatures or hurt Ron Johnson as well in November.
One other result that caught my eye, and recall last week that the Speaker of the State House in Arizona, Rusty Bowers, was defeated, and that was a piece of the Trump revenge tour, I believe. And he had testified before the January 6th committee. Well, the next stop on the revenge tour was intended to be the Assembly Speaker in Wisconsin, Robin Vos, who faced a Trump-endorsed challenger, Adam Steen. Vos had drawn Trump's ire for refusing to try to decertify the 2020 election. Here's a headline from Wisconsin media in July, meaning a month ago. It says, Vos says former President Trump called him last week in another push to decertify 2020 presidential results. When Vos declined that, President Trump went on social media, called him a professional rhino, and so forth. But Vos has survived this challenge by a couple points, not very many votes. There's only about 10,000 votes in this state assembly race, and so the difference between him and the challenger, Adam Steen, was only about 250. But fascinating to see him survive when Rusty Bowers in Arizona did not. Kim, anything else that caught your eye on election night?
Yeah, one thing, because it goes to the division on the other side. And the news that I saw was that Ilhan Omar, who was obviously one of the members of the infamous Squad, a very progressive crew of Democrats in Washington, she's in Minnesota's 5th congressional district. She was running for her 3rd term, and she won her primary, but barely. It came down to a few thousand votes, and she had been challenged by Don Samuels, who's a moderate Democrat, a former Minneapolis city councilman. And he really went after Ilhan Omar's defund the police position. He was very pro-police. In fact, he and his wife actually successfully sued the city of Minneapolis to require it to increase its police staffing to what is required under the city charter, which is, I think, 740 regular police staff. And this race really heated up and showed the divides in the party and showed a certain degree to which even establishment Democrats are getting sick of the reputation these progressives are giving them. Mayor Jacob Frey came out and endorsed Don Samuels. A number of the building trades unions came out. Suburban mayors all supported Samuels in the end. He had a super PAC who was putting a lot of money behind behind him. And again, this race, she won, but not by much. And the supposition out there is that results like this, coming, by the way, also on primaries against other squad members like Cori Bush in Missouri and Rashida Tlaib in Michigan, they both won as well. But there's a supposition that this is going to encourage some more big challenges to the raft of progressive candidates in 2024.
Thank you, Kim and Alicia. Thank you all for listening. You can email us at pwpodcast@wsj.com. If you like the show, please hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast app, and we'll be back tomorrow with another edition of Potomac Watch.